All right, welcome everybody to the Science Court verdict. My name is Ellad Tadmor. I will take a few minutes here to just give background on what we've been up to during this semester, in case there's anybody here who hasn't been following along, or even maybe some of the jurors don't know what we did in the beginning. And then we'll turn it over to Bill McGinnis, to the judge, to run the verdict. Okay, so let's just start with some background. I think everybody here knows what Science Court is now. We're a system for using a legal-like system to explore controversial issues. This is a course out of the University of Minnesota Honors Program. What we do is we pick an issue, we research the facts, conduct a jury trial, and report to the public. The course has been developed and co-taught over the last 3 years. This is our third year doing it, by an interdisciplinary group. This year's crew was myself, Lauren Klatch, CJ Sinner, Bill McGinnis, Jeremy Rose, and Corey Fleck. And as you can see from the little blurbs there, we come from all across different disciplines, from aerospace to psychology to journalism. So it's really an interesting mix of backgrounds. Now, the way Science Court is set up right now is that we have a case statement, which is described as some objective or some issue in society and a proposed solution to achieve it. And then the legal team, the students who are on the legal team, devise pro and con strategies, where the idea is that the pro position is close to the one proposed in the case statement itself, and the con one proposes an alternative approach, which is typically closer to the status quo, which also attempts to address the objective. Unlike a debate where you simply take a premise and then you try and poke holes in it and argue back and forth on semantics sometimes, here both sides really have to come up with comprehensive solutions. And so we try and not fall into the trap of debates of this nature that often have. So we started the semester by considering 3 possible cases that we would do this year. The first one was, the first option we considered was to promote a better work-life balance. Americans should have the options to work remotely in cases where their jobs allowed it. Option B was to ensure a sustainable food supply. Regenerative agriculture must be prioritized by the US government. And option C is to fight polarization in American society. A mandatory national service should be adopted. Now, to select the case, what we did is the students divided into 3 groups. I'm just pausing. Okay, I just want to make sure we were recording. Students are divided into 3 groups, and they spent about 2 weeks looking at those 3 cases I just described in relative depth to make sure that they were good cases in the way that we consider good cases in Science Court. Controversial, there's plenty of arguments on both sides, they're balanced, we have a bunch of criteria. Now the results, these teams presented their results at a webinar on February 2nd. And if you're interested, the recording is online, you can hear their presentations. Those teams were basically pitching their idea, but they were also proving that those ideas were good, would be good cases for us to do. And then we voted on it. In fact, that was a public event, this event that's linked here. And in addition to the class, we had about 30 participants, about 40 participants. And we voted, all of us voted to pick our case for the semester. And the winner was the one that we did, of course, to fight polarization in American society. A mandatory national service should be adopted. And it was pretty comprehensive that all groups, students, instructors, and attendees all picked this topic for our case. So then we develop it. We spent the semester doing that. We follow a kind of a systems engineering approach, something that we've been talking to a friend of the project, Jim Hartung, about. And we basically follow a method the way they would in engineering for designing complex systems. And so I won't go through all the details, but it involves identifying stakeholders, defining objectives, and then going through an iterative process where you figure out what are the issues that inform the topic. That might identify new stakeholders we haven't considered, And then under each of these topics, there are questions, and those questions may identify other domains. And it's a feedback loop and quite a complicated process to get your head around a complicated issue in a short period of time with a lot of people involved working in different teams. And so we find that this sort of systematic approach, it's actually what we've been doing all along the project, but this sort of conceptual framework of systems engineering we found quite useful as a way of thinking about it. Okay, then what came after that, after all that work, is we had our trial. The first part is jury selection. The jury that attends the trial is a volunteer jury. We had nearly 60 volunteers for Science Court this year, which we're very pleased with that turnout. And of these, we selected 24 to serve on the jury based on criteria attempting to create as heterogeneous a representation as possible based on, what is heterogeneous depends on the case. In this case, it was based on race, politics, gender, education, and socioeconomic status. We then further divided those juries into 3 panels, and that was done in order to facilitate discussion. So you had smaller groups of people that could talk to each other more effectively. The trial was on Saturday, this past Saturday. It took all day from 9 to 4. And we'll be posting all this online, the recordings of all the sessions and so on. We're not there yet, but they should come online relatively soon if you missed parts of it. So the trial was on Saturday, as I said. We started with opening statements by the pro and con side. And then there was a series of short, about 20-minute sessions, 12 sessions, each focused on a different aspect informing the case related to economics, sociology, psychology, and so on. And each of those sessions began with a presentation by a science team student who researched that topic. And then there were questions from the legal team and from the jury. And then there were closing statements and then a final discussion at the end where any questions we couldn't get to, or questions asked earlier where there was additional information by the science team, all of that was sort of discussed at the very end of the trial. Finally, deliberation took place on Sunday, the day after the trial. The juries met separately in 3 independent meetings. They discussed amongst themselves. They basically had to fill what's called a special jury form, a special verdict form, and they had questions to answer related to those 12 sessions to help them kind of clarify their thinking, and then weight those different sessions, however they decide, and come up with a verdict. And so they reached 3 independent verdicts on Sunday. Which brings us to what we're about to do right now. I'm about to pass control over to Judge Bill McGinnis, who ran the trial on Saturday, and will run the verdict announcement. That will include brief recaps of the pro and con positions by the legal teams. Then the foreperson for each jury panel will be called upon to read the verdict of their particular panel. And then the final verdict will be a majority rule based on the verdicts of the juries. And so we'll see what comes up, what happens. After that, it'll come back to me and we'll open the floor for a moderated discussion. Everybody here is invited to participate. If you would like to say something, then just click on the Q&A box and just put your name in and say, I'd like to ask a question or something. And then we'll kind of run through those and maybe based on the comments, allow other people to comment. We'll try and cover as many of those as we can. We plan to run until about 5, so that's kind of puts a cap on what we can do today. So that's it. With that, I will turn it over to Bill. And
thank you very much, Professor Tadmor. I appreciate the introduction. In order to make it clear what the complex proposals were and all the work that the students did this semester, we'll have a brief review of what the pro team position in favor of mandatory service was. At this time, I'll call on Mr. Andrew Bremner and Mr. Arun Sunthringham, sorry, to present the pro-team proposals in favor of, summarize the pro-team proposals in favor of mandatory service.
Thank you. Would it be possible to get screen sharing permissions?
Yes, one moment.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, yes, so basically, if you were not here on Saturday, we're just gonna run through a quick summary of our proposal and its arguments. So our proposal is a mandatory service proposal so all civilians would be required to either do military service or do civilian service. There would be a variety of civilian options, including in a variety of fields, including infrastructure, health, climate, and education, etc. Variety of options. Participants would be able to rank which programs they would want to serve in, with then placements being made to maintain proper size and heterogeneity of groups. And these programs would include skills training to help make the service more worthwhile for participants. Service would take place between the ages of 18 to 30. And we would follow a decentralized model, which means local governments and state government. So basically we'd start creating a service program that would be a part of this larger program that civilians would be able to partake in. Would start with local government. They would address a public need, create a proposal for something that would get sent up the line to a federal agency that would review it, make sure that it includes all of the requirements, and then that would receive funding. The idea of this is based around contact theory, which is the idea that different groups of people interacting helps improve social relations, and it has a variety of conditions that would be is a priority to make sure those conditions are met. And we are also seeking to strengthen a sense of national identity, which has been linked to increased civic service. And then Arun will walk you through the science and the arguments.
Thanks, Andrew. So quick recap would be, we reviewed around 5 domains from psychology to sociology, health, education, and economics in order to design our proposal. A core feature, as Andrew said, was based around contact theory, and we have the requirement that organizations would have to fulfill the all-port conditions, in which participants should have equal status, work towards a common goal that require their cooperation, and there would be institutional facilitation. This is all designed to reduce polarization, while with the large numbers of mandatory nature, it will also fulfill a lot of public need, and participants would gain hard and soft skills. The estimated cost based on Minerva's projections would be around up to 100 billion, but we expect economies of scale to play. But we think that this should be contextualized around the cost of polarization, with wealth inequality tied to rising polarization, government shutdowns costing GDP and also federal money, and also with public health. We think with the health benefits associated with this, that would come down. We expect this to be a decade-long investment, where its outcomes would be studied based on the data we collect by scientists, and it would be reviewed by Congress should this program go forward. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Again, to summarize the Khan proposal for voluntary service, we'll call on Ms. Madeline Stankiewicz and Mr. Nishant Satpathy to present the Khan position.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'm just going to share my screen. Okay, so we're on the Khan side. Just to summarize our trial on Saturday, we on the Khan side choose to advocate for a voluntary program to combat polarization. And how exactly would our voluntary program be structured? Our voluntary program will be a combination of both existing and new service programs. By existing service programs, we refer to programs such as Teach for America and Peace Corps, that will not only be the only available programs, but we would also create new service programs which may take the form of a volunteering program, volunteering service, or internships with companies. The time period of participation in this program is very variable, as it depends on the way the person participating in the program can choose how much they would want to participate in it. It can range from 6 months to up to 2 to 3 years, or even more than that. And their exposure will not stay the same. Like, they won't be doing the same activities over and over again, and their exposure will grow as they take part in the program more. We are open, the program will be open for Americans ranging from 16 and above, and we have no particular focus on an age group, and we'll be focusing on a wide age spectrum, either from people from ages 16 and above. We are aiming at a diverse set of objectives, and people who are taking part in this program can take part in humanitarian service in their community and also take part in technical skills development. So why exactly are we focusing on voluntary? The reason we are focusing on voluntary is because it is flexible and since there is a variable time period of participation, it allows people to choose how much they would like to participate and also choose when they would like to participate. It is also a broader access to communities, as there are different types of programs and which are less selective and catering to different skill sets of different people. Also, since we are in America and America values the freedom of choice so strongly, we place freedom to choose as a focal point in our voluntary program, giving people the choice when to decide when to take part in the program and how long they would like to take part in the program. This graph exactly shows how diversity is multifold in terms of ethnicity, educational background, and employment. And for this program to be successful, we would need a heterogeneous participation of these communities. Now I'd like to turn it over to Madeline to continue.
Yes, so when we created our program and then when we argued it on Saturday, we talked a lot about identity, contact theory, and safe spaces, and ensuring that the spaces that we created not only were diverse, but also places for safe dialogue where people trusted each other. Furthermore, we asked the jury, when deliberating, to not only consider which would best solve the issue of polarization, but also which would be able to be easily implemented within United States society. And we mentioned the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as the other crises that have made it evident that the American public is not very receptive to the government dictating how people live their lives. And so thus, that was why we believed that a voluntary service would be the best program. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And that represents a great deal of work on the part of the students and a great deal of science-based presentation that we listened to on Saturday. And now it is time for the jury forepersons to present their verdicts. First, I would like to call on jury foreperson Lauren Agnew to come on screen and to present the verdict, the vote count of the jury, and the explanation of the jury. Foreperson Lauren Agnew, please.
Yep, I'm here. So first off, our jury just wanted to say great job to all of you students. We really enjoyed participating in this. Our final vote, we voted for the voluntary national service, a vote of 5-3. And some of the main reasons we voted this way in particular were the freedom of choice argument the con team made. In particular, we were afraid that a mandatory service program might result in negative feelings from those being made to serve, and thus they wouldn't fully participate in depolarizing themselves and their ideals through the program. But the 3 pro votes on our jury would like to note that we fully supported the pro team all the way and our minds were not changed. But yes, that's our vote.
Thank you very much. I would like to now call on jury foreperson James Halpin to come on screen and to explain that jury's vote and explanation and decision.
Hi there. Wow. thank you. Well, first of all, great job to you guys doing all of this for a semester and these presentations. Previous jury person, good job keeping it really short and succinct. I have a lot here. I apologize in advance. But we voted for the mandatory national service as argued by the pro team by a vote of 6 for pro, 1 for con. For the con side, it was mostly, just based on the concerns that we have for the pro side, like just making sure that the pro side keeps in consideration the ethics of what they're planning. So locations and experiences that these programs will cater to. Make sure the pro side deals with the effects of discrimination for those in the program and those they're serving, making sure equity is ensured and carried out in terms of safety, and making sure there are systems for the program to remain strictly civilian and not military based. And how can equal participation come from all socioeconomic backgrounds? And is there a consideration for the immediate political pushback if this were to pass? Just to give our case for the pro, again, we just want to note that, of course, given the time that students had, neither of these two programs are perfect, but we did see that the pro team made a stronger case, proposing the value of their potential program and ideas. So, there's a large deficit of trust these days, and establishing such a program in today's world would definitely seem to tiptoe the line of overstepping the bounds for a too top heavy down approach, almost authoritarian style program that risk centralizing a little bit too much power over the people that are involved. However, or that are due to serving this program. But looking back just 100 years ago, not even, having a mandatory program strikes similarities to the military draft of World War II and how that draft affected and drew from the population regardless of backgrounds and beliefs, mostly without bias. The quote-unquote volunteer army of today has, from an outside view, drawn largely from a pool of people who may feel forced to serve for current and future economic benefits, and allow people of higher socioeconomic status to opt out and avoid participating. As such, thus creating a rift between these different classes in the USA and part of this polarization that we're dealing with. So from a macro perspective, like clear black and white, nuanced view, a mandatory program would do a better job of drawing a larger pool of people from different views and extremes and different backgrounds and get them to a common table for establishing common compromises, morals, and goals, such as more trees, improved infrastructure, and access to national parks, which we think that the pro team argued would help to reestablish a positive trust and identity on a federal, state, and local level. So the pro team made a great argument based on the topic of polarization, with participation from all, and granted that there, like they said, there would be personal input and ranked choice placement and timeline of service. We think there would be more opportunities to improve on the current issue of American polarization, more so than the current voluntary program.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your input. And now we'll call on jury foreperson Christine Dowdell to come on screen and to present results of that jury, the vote and the explanation and the verdict.
The vote was 6 for pro and 0 for con. But in our deliberations, it was a little more mixed than that. I'll read our explanation, which is rather short, but we addressed discussed a lot of the same issues that James just mentioned. So our written explanation says, based on the evidence presented and the narrow scope of the question for jurors in addressing political polarization in particular, the jury, we concluded that mandatory national service would be more effective in achieving the goal of reducing polarization. This is because we felt the Pro proposal engages more of the population and had a more complete vision of how their program would use American superordinate identity to reduce polarization. However, there were many of us wanted to note that the jury could not endorse the idea of mandatory as a whole due to several other considerations, unanswered questions, including ethical and operational issues. That's the end of our statement. It boils down to feeling the overall goal would be served by more people being involved, which means the mandatory versus the voluntary program. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have now heard from the jury panels. The jury panels have spoken. This is the decision of the jury panels of Science Court that the mandatory national service program, as argued by the Pro team, should be adopted.